Yay, good evening. I'm Jennifer Obaseki and this is Truth and Justice TV. And today we are discussing everything about women. Today is International Women's Day. So, right now, celebrate yourself, sisters. Today you sit down and say you are fabulous, you are full of life, and there is nothing and no one that's going to stop you from reaching your full potential. And why is it important to celebrate International Women's Day? First of all, fellas, gentlemen, we need you to help us celebrate women as well. And the reason why it's important for everybody to celebrate International Women's Day is women are not recognized for the work that we do. Yes, I hear you saying that you're tired of hearing about women's issues, but today it's all about really celebrating the female and the females around you. That could be your daughter, your aunties, your mothers, your sisters. And the really, really good thing about it is you don't really need to do too much but outline how much you appreciate that person. But we also need to look at the challenges that are there for women who want to be living their fullest life and reaching their fullest potential. We have to say, in the UK, we are quite lucky. There are some provisions, safeguards against us not receiving equal treatment. We should not have to demand equal pay, equal access, a seat at the table, or owning the table. But in some other parts of the world, women don't have as much rights. They don't have the same support networks or legislation in place to make sure that they can try and achieve certain goals. There are also some cultural practices that hold women back in parts of the world. And not only that, for those women who have moved to different countries from those where they originate from, they may still be subject to harmful traditional and cultural practices that don't enable them reach certain heights academically, professionally, or even in just being their own true selves. So, what's important about celebrating Women's Day? It's important for us to also be reminded of the sustainable goals that should be set for women: access to justice, access to healthcare. So, we're going to be talking about some of these things today and what you can do, how you do your own little bit or big bit in making sure that that happens. Now, we know that both female and male children are at risk of certain levels of violence and harm. But their statistics are very clear with regards to how susceptible or how more at risk certain female children are towards things like sexual violence and also domestic issues within the home and being the victims for harmful cultural practices. So we look at things like honour killings and also sexual violence, and the statistics are what make us take the specific policies to make sure that females are safeguarded in certain situations. The example I'll give is the death of Sarah Everard, and last year, as we've featured here, the different incidents where it was seen that females were targeted and more susceptible to incidents of violence, even here in the UK. So within those particular crimes, what we saw was because they were women, they were set upon more easily and fell victim and sadly died as a consequence of their horrific injuries. This also went on to the situation we saw of the teacher who was considered to be killed by a stranger encounter, and the two sisters who were sadly killed after a birthday picnic. And we saw that there were a number of incidents that showed that women were still at such a high level of risk, even of violence, even here in the UK. So when we look at those situations, we see that it's not a case of not treating or recognizing the risks that are prevalent around males, but it's acknowledging that women and girls are subject to specific levels of violence that are quite high and particular at sometimes in nature towards the fact that they are female genders. So when we look at that now, all the more reason why we must look at what barriers are there and how to remove the barriers to making sure that they are treated equally, have equal opportunities within every element that's in education, access to justice, making sure that they are also receiving the same levels of pay as their male counterparts. So we're going to take a little short break and then we're going to look at areas where you as a female might think, do you know what, I want to make sure that I am setting myself up to ensuring I achieve certain goals that I want to achieve within my work and within my personal life. So we'll look at the personal life perspective, we'll look at the work perspective, and then we'll look at what you can do to help kickstart initiatives to ensuring equality amongst women and girls in your own little or wide community. See you after this break. So welcome back, and yes, we're celebrating International Women's Day and looking at getting rid of some of the barriers that women have that stop them from achieving their fullest potential. So let's look at the home and seeing what kind of issues women face. Quite commonly, some women may have challenges with regards to balancing family life as well as their personal career goals. So the first thing you really have to look at is, what is it that you want to do? Is it that you want to study? Is it that you want to step up within the career ladder? And what the challenges are. If you happen to have children, because not all women are mothers, or if you are caring for somebody, you have to first of all look at what time you have to dedicate to that particular goal. Now, if you are a mother and you are struggling with childcare, the first place you should really be looking is at your local authority to see if there are any reduced or free childcare places in your area. There are some provisions for children under the age of 2, but they're very limited, and there are usually free places for children of the age of 3 and over. If you find that a lot of the nurseries are full, the other place that you may want to look for are registered child care providers. Once you're able to find yourself a routine where you are able to drop the child off, then normally you can then allocate what free time you have. Then it's really to look towards how you fit that in with your career aspirations or your study program. Once again, a lot of the studying can be done online now. Big change in that arena. So you should really set that pathway for what subjects you want to take on and when you want to complete them by. If it's within the workspace, the one thing that you should really do is set out what your goals are within your periods of appraisal. When you're given a role, what you're normally supposed to have is a period when your position or your actual work is being reviewed. And that is a two-way conversation quite often women are so grateful to be in their job and being given the little bit of flexibility within work time. Your workplace actually have to make reasonable allowances for you if you have children or you're caring for somebody. And those reasonable adjustments may be starting 15 minutes early so that you can leave 15 minutes early. But again, it is within the discretion of your employer. But so far as they're reasonable, once again, they should not be rejected. But you also have to plan towards this, and sometimes you have to earn your employer's trust. So it also is dependent on how well you are showing up and making sure your work is up to par, so it's not questioned or doubted, that you can actually manage any changes within your terms and conditions. So once again, making sure you carve out that free time, making sure you look for the support, whether it's going to be with paid childcare or childcare within the family, and then also with regards to work, setting out what that career path is, whether it's during your appraisals, you asking for extra training, asking for more flexibility, asking to achieve a certain post, asking for them to support one of your other career goals or another. The other thing is, for women, sometimes we feel it's too late to transition into a new profession. I've often taken on women under mentoring programs or work training within my own particular practice, and that's women who are usually returning to law or wanting to step into the legal arena following having an initial career path. It is never too late to reinvent yourself. Don't think that because you've been a teacher for the last 15 years, you can't suddenly retrain and do something else that you're passionate about or have wanted to do for a long time. Don't put limits on yourself. So the other thing is, if you've really decided that, you know what, you're not happy in doing a certain vocation, then why not see how you can then transition and lend your skills into your new pathway, and again, make a plan. Just before we leave that segment, it's important that even if you're caring for somebody who's older, so you're caring for an adult that might be dependent, there is support that's out there. The care provisions that your local authority are supposed to give to you, and also work out with you with regards to carers' pay, is something that if you're not sure about, ask for a conversation with your local authority. And if you're not getting help from them, try and go to the CAB or to a lawyer that specialises with the support of welfare benefits, so that they can outline to you what support you should be given. Within the local authority legislation, there's particular grants and provisions that's made for adults who are dependent on social care or adults who may have disabilities. Now, when looking at what you might want to do within the community, we find a lot of women start initiatives, and even as somebody who might want to take advantage of them, you might think, gosh, my church is doing this, or my mosque is doing this, or my daughter's come home with this leaflet, and another community group is doing that. And it can be quite consuming. Again, think about what you're passionate about if you are somebody who is looking to go into one of these programs. Also, try and establish what is the provider offering you at the end of it. A lot of the time we see these pop-ups, flyers, and what are you actually getting out of it? If it's one session and you're having transferable skills or directions being given to you, perfect. But if it's a case of paying money, find out what the terms and conditions are. Is it refundable? What if you're halfway through this book club or whatever it is you're doing and you realise that actually this isn't for me? What if you've given over a couple of £100 and it's an investment club and there are no returns? Always look at the terms and conditions of whatever you're getting involved in, whether they've said it's a sisterhood group or community group or whatever group. The whole point is, most groups should have a level of structure, and they should also be able to set out what programs and policies they have in place. If those basics are not there, then you should really decide how much involvement you want to give that particular project. And again, for all the fantastic women out there who are trying to start initiatives, or if you're not a woman and you're a man and you are trying to create female led or female engaging policies or programs, really important that you start at the top with somebody who is qualified or experienced with regards to safeguarding. Often women can be vulnerable and step into situations where they're looking for support, and at times providers for programs can become overwhelmed. And not only that, but there can be predators in the mix that are ready to take advantage of those vulnerable individuals. And there's nothing worse than a vulnerable woman or girl being re-victimized in a situation where they've gone to ask for help or they thought that they could trust. So really always important whenever you're doing anything to make sure that you have a safeguarding officer and a safeguarding policy. So it's not just about treating women and girls equally, it's also about making sure that in your environment or within your program that they are protected. Once you've decided who that person is, made sure you've got the right policies, then it's important that you decide what kind of program you're going to run. So we're going to take another short break and then we'll come back and talk about programs that are needed for women and girls to make sure that equality is sustained and also ready and beautifully embracing for the next generation. See you after this break. And we are celebrating women and also discussing what initiatives should look like that are designed or started to try and support women and girls. So first of all, we spoke about what barriers are in place and what you should also do to make sure that you yourself are trying to strive to make sure that your aspirations with regards to education, your aspirations with regards to your career are really hitting their fullest potential. And then we spoke briefly about what you should do if you're trying to initiate a project, a forum to support women and girls. And the focus should be on one, really safeguarding, making sure that they are safe, making sure that you have somebody who's responsible for ensuring protection of the vulnerable ones who may come to you, those that may need help, how you make sure that you are signposting, making the necessary referrals if you are dealing with a vulnerable group of women. And then also, if there are situations that are completely beyond what you're able to offer, making sure that you don't actually overpromise and underdeliver. Really, really important. So if you've got a program, making sure that you have proper policies, those are your engagement policies, your terms and conditions, outlining if women can get refunds, can have a change of mind, etc. And so that you are running something that becomes successful and sustainable. So talking about sustainability, it's really important, and one of the main themes for this International Women's Day is making sure that people understand the concept of equality and making sure equality is sustainable for the next generation. So one of the things that I mentioned is we often like to start initiatives, but don't always make sure that they are really running to their fullest potential or are really value for money and are living up to a high standard. So the first thing is, are you running a long-term or short-term project? Think about it. Is it something that is going to be a one-off session, a 6-month session, something that you want to see is just growing and see where it goes? So think about duration and set times and standards for review. Is this working? Is it not working? The other thing you might want to think about is collaboration. Another thing we like to do around women is start one project, liaise with another project, but when it doesn't work out, we think, gosh, how did it go wrong? Always set out terms, memorandums of understanding, joint venture projects, collaborative agreements, so that you understand that is this going to be a union just for this one project for a short term, or is it going to be 6 months? So we do a bid together, and then if we do this bid, how is the data and the finances shared? All of that needs to be well thought out, because often as women we like to engage with things but don't like to think about the legalities and the real practical sense of running projects and responsibility and accountability. So really important that that is all fully thrashed out before you start to engage in projects with another organisation. The other thing is, what initiatives are needed out there? So first of all, we spoke about it from the top of the hour, which is protection, making sure that you are engaging in projects that allow to awareness about the prevention of violence against women and girls. That is a very important topic, because violence against women and girls covers so many different aspects about them being self-aware, prevention from grooming, having self-value, making sure they don't put themselves in vulnerable situations, making sure that they're aware how to get out of and away from domestic violence. Again, projects as to how women can thrive after surviving domestic violence. So that can be a lot to do with development of themselves and identifying risks around them and how to not actually become re-victimized, as I mentioned that earlier. Other projects around women and girls is access to healthcare. COVID's shown us that during the pandemic, women were quite susceptible because often they were dependent on others or they lost main providers within their homes. So making sure that their own mental and physical well-being and access to services that ensure that is also a very big issue. And that can be also around the areas of diseases specific to women or that women suffer from in higher numbers. So we're talking about cervical cancer, breast cancer, also heart conditions. Women often suffer, quite frankly, with more respiratory issues, and that's often overlooked. And then also to do with financial empowerment, women who need to upskill, projects around teaching women how to improve themselves financially, becoming financially independent, establishing businesses. Also, women who want to pass down culture and crafts. That's another area. So we're talking about things like hairdressing, how to maintain Afro-owned businesses. We've seen the massive growth of that over the last 2 years, and that's something that becomes to the forefront of my mind. I have so many clients that are hairdressers or in the beauty industry, and I always want to say to them, if you 3 or you 5 collaborate, you could dominate a certain market. So teaching them how to scale in business is also really, really important. And financial advice for women and empowering them financially is, I must say, such an important topic. And I'm very passionate about that, because women also need to understand the concept of legacy. And that's another reason why the sustainability element of this year's International Women's Day is really important. It's one thing to be able to be independent, have growth and develop wealth, but it's another thing to maintain it and also pass it down to the next generation. So really important that you protect that with wills, trusts, and understand that you also have the responsibility of making sure that not just you're okay, but you also leave things for the next generation of women and girls, especially your own girls. So thank you for staying with me today. Do go out and celebrate yourself for International Women's Day, and make sure that you continue to support every single woman and girl that's around you. So if you can't be good, be careful, and I'll see you next week.